Okey.
Şimdi çeviri olacak mı? Çeviri olacak mı şimdi şeylerde?
Olmaz. Tamam mıyız? Değerli katılımcılar, ikinci oturumumuz ders ve sunumlarla devam edecek. Simultane çeviriyi tekrar hatırlatmak isterim. Farklı dildeki sunumlar için arzu eden katılımcılarımız simultane çeviri için kulaklıkları temin edebilirler. Toplantıyı Zoom üzerinden takip eden katılımcılarımız ise Zoom'daki alt menüden simultane çeviriyi açabilirler. Dear participants, if you wish, you can provide headset for simulcast translation. If you are following the meeting via Zoom, you can turn on the simulcast translation from the submenu in the Zoom. Şimdi yaz okulumuzun ilk dersi olan kriz dönemlerinde sosyal medya analizi, University of South Florida öğretim üyesi Dr. Fayzan Ali'nin anlatımı video şeklinde gösterilecektir. İyi seyirler.
Ali. I'm an associate professor at the Mullah College of Business, University of South Florida. Before we go further into this talk, I want to thank the management of this. I'm recording this session and I am quite confident that we'll get some thought-provoking discussion through this presentation or through this talk. So let's quickly dive into this talk. What I'll talk about is social media analytics during crisis. More interestingly, when we talk about 2020, most of us relate it to something not normal, and these days everybody is asking this one question, and that is, are we going to go back to normal? That is the first question everybody have got on their mind. Obviously 2020 had been quite a tough year. For 2021, people are always asking about going back to normal. Is it happening? Is it not happening? What is the normal or whatever? So this new normal, I think, would not be like what we were used to in the past. Obviously things have changed. Some of the stuff that has changed is for good, which is more digitization, more transformation, more technology based stuff. So a lot of stuff that has changed that way probably is not going to go back because people are already looking at the benefits of it. For instance, right now, this talk that I'm delivering through Zoom or an online technology, obviously universities, conferences, and everybody is getting the hang of it, really understanding it. So I don't really think that we are going to go back pre-2020. Some of the stuff may go back. Obviously, I'm not rolling out face-to-face meetings or whatever, but still, it will be something new, not exactly something pre-2020. So during 2020, we had this COVID-19, and even now we are going through it. So it's not over. We are still during the pandemic. We have seen some interesting insights into consumer behavior, the changes that we have seen through consumer behavior. So I'll share a couple of them with you, and then we can go ahead and talk about social media analytics as well very quickly. Now, one thing is for sure that 2020 and COVID-19 was not all bad for everyone. So yes, some industries were really underwhelmed. Furniture, luxury products, obviously hospitality and tourism, appliances, anything that required a lot of investment saw an underwhelming response, underwhelming demand. But then also there were companies that were overwhelmed. So there's also some sectors or industries that saw a lot of growth. Zoom or teleconferencing or technology is one of it. People who have never heard of Zoom, now everybody knows it. Everybody knows Microsoft Teams, everybody knows Google Meet, and all these type of things. They have seen a huge increase in their demand. So we obviously have seen several things that saw an overwhelming response in terms of consumer consumption, but then also there was something that was underwhelming. There's obviously changes are some of them are very generic, like I just talked about, but then some of them are very specific. Most of us move towards online shopping, right? So because my topic is about social media analytics, so I will dig a bit deeper into specific behaviors with regard to online shopping or online channels of business and stuff like that. So let's look into some of the major trends. So one trend that we saw a lot in the last couple of months, or I would say that the last year and a half, was that people are using a lot of digital touch points now while buying things. So there's a lot of traffic on search engines, on social media feeds, on influencers. Interestingly, there are some new platforms coming out like TikTok that is seeing a huge increase from influencers who are uploading stuff, and then obviously people follow them and buy stuff. So there's a big surge into usage of mixed digital touch points along the buying journey for consumers. We are also seeing that mobile wallets is another emerging trend, and many places you would see that this symbol that shows cashless transactions or stuff like that. PayPal also launched QR code based transactions and payments, so we are obviously seeing stuff like that. Okay, and then moving along, the other major trend is omni-channel. So omni-channel, just because people are using multiple digital touch points, so we are also seeing that omni-channel is being launched. Let's say in the US, for example, service providers have multiple channels, so you can buy things from their website, you can call them, or you can use their app to buy, or you can walk in to buy things. Omni-channel, the basic idea is whether you are walking in, let's say you walk into a store, you look at something, and if you want to order it through the app, it should be very fluid. You shouldn't feel that you're using multiple channels. Right now, from user experience standpoint, like I said, it's not as fluid. So when people use multiple channels from the same service provider, it seems like if they're using these channels from different service providers. So that's a trend, but it's not as clean at the moment as it was supposed to be. And then the third one is digital sales. I mean, because people are staying at home, so they have to buy things online, right? So that's another thing. We are seeing a lot of growth in online purchasing. A couple of things important here are that even that growth that is happening, most of it is coming from mobile devices instead of desktop devices. So that's one interesting fact in it. The other one is that a lot of this traffic or there's a significant increase in the traffic coming from social media. So people are using their phones and they are sent through a social media feed to an online retailer shop like Amazon or online digital platforms for different service providers to consume the products or services. So that's another trend that's coming out. Now, from consumer standpoint, what are some trends? Of course, consumers all of a sudden are exposed to a lot of digital stuff, online learning, online working, remote working, telemedicine, online deliveries, streaming services. So there's a lot of stuff that is being thrown out towards consumers in a very short time. Now, it obviously changes people's behavior in a certain way, but it's an important thing to consider on how services can change the way they attract or sustain their customer base because of this change in touch points or change in channels that we are seeing. So, interestingly, there are new hobbies emerging from this pandemic. So people are staying more at home, and when they stay at home, they spend more time into their hobbies. There's a lot of time being spent on entertainment, which is gaming and games and stuff like that. Bear this in mind because these also offer you new avenues of advertising your products or services. There's a huge surge of advertising on gaming platforms because more and more people are playing games, and there's more eyes on gaming platforms. So that's a unique advertising medium that is coming through. Okay, so just going to go into social media very quickly to show you a couple of things. So the one thing that is very interesting about social media is about the enormous amount of data that is being generated on social media, and they all know, we all use social media, and the amount of tweets and the amount of Facebook posts or YouTube videos that are being uploaded, or all these things are just unbelievable, and it's providing us a lot of things as service providers to look into and see if we can figure out any viable consumer segments that can be targeted. Now, interestingly, the social media's world is a bit different from the normal marketplace that we have. If I ask you what is which one is the most liked picture on Instagram, which is an egg. And it has around 54 or 55 million likes. That's why it's important to look deeper into this medium, because it doesn't work like traditional mediums. So it's a bit different. Obviously, social media in itself is an important tool, right? And the reason is because it can help you to understand return on investment. It can help you to identify trends. It can help you to understand sentiments of your consumer groups or even stakeholders. However, when we look at social media analytics, it didn't work like that during the COVID-19, right? People ignored a lot of tools, and there was an over-bombardment or over-emphasis on COVID-19. Everything was more or less like COVID-19, which shouldn't have happened, right? But I mean, that's what happened. So in social media, what is important is that you need to be engaged with your consumers. Now, companies have seen that during any crisis, if you are having your social media presence, if companies respond to a crisis on social media, their value increase by around 20%. If a company responds really poorly towards social media, any crisis on social media, there's a 30% decrease on value. So there's a direct proportionality there. And there's a need for companies to understand this and really respond well on social media for crisis, especially for crisis. Further actions, it's very important that even when we are doing analytics with social media, when we have all these numbers, not every insight that comes from social media is actionable. So what needs to be done, it's important that social media should be used for sharing important updates, and we are talking about during pandemics, or right after pandemics. The post should be sweet, simple, and just to the point, providing updates, because during crisis, your consumers are really looking forward to get some updates from the organizations. The other thing is, find ways to help. See how can you help people. One great example of this is from this company, Anheuser-Busch. They were a beer company, but during pandemic, right in the start, they used all their plants and all their supply chain to first make and then supply hand sanitizers into the same bottles as beers. Nike is another example. So Nike started a YouTube channel where they partnered with leading athletes, and they were doing fitness programs, and the customers were, it was free for them to join and follow those programs and stuff like that. The third thing is make sure that the messaging is compassionate. Use your best judgment to see, yes, of course, you cannot completely ignore COVID-19 or any pandemic for that reason, but do not trend check, do not jump on that bandwagon and keep repeating the things again and again. And lastly, avoid profit focused posts. Many companies do that, especially small businesses, which at the time of a pandemic where people are normally very sensitive, it seems quite bad, and it creates a very bad image from PR perspective. So avoid profit focused posts. Pepsi's example is a classic example. This is a video available on YouTube. Because of the shortage of time, obviously I cannot play it, but in this example, Pepsi came up with an advertisement campaign during Black Lives Matter happening in the US. And in their video, they sort of showed this lady who drinks Pepsi, and then she stood up to authority. The bad thing was that it took a huge blow in the face of Pepsi, because it was a big disaster on social media because of being trend checking. So that is a bad thing to do. And the last thing is that, if your competitors and everybody is talking about COVID-19, you shouldn't. Cannot ignore it. Obviously the whole world is going through it, but be creative and see how well can you engage your customers or your consumers without over-emphasizing on the pandemic or COVID-19. So my concluding remarks, other crises, all the other crises first of all, requires you to cut down budgets, especially marketing budgets. But COVID-19 is different. It has created a need for marketers because it's something new and we are going through it. The other thing is usage of internet has gone up by 50 to 70%. So we see more and more people are on the internet and they are using internet, consuming internet. So instead of selling, our focus should be on engaging customers. Like I said, don't focus too much on profits or trend checking. Rather, how can you use compassionate messaging to engage your customer base? Try to anthropomorphize the brands and services. The more humanness you show through your brands and services, the more engaged customers you can create for your brand. Education becomes important because everything is online. So many brands have started using digital platforms to try to educate their consumers. And for instance, there's a company in the US called Home Depot. They sell all construction stuff, construction related stuff. They started a YouTube channel, started showing people how to build things, do it yourself related stuff. And then their sales actually increased because people watched those videos, went to Home Depot, started buying those things to do that stuff by themselves. Many restaurants did the same thing because teach people how to cook different type of meals. Education related content was taken pretty well by consumers during this time. I see that there's a new market segments being emerged, people who spend a lot of time on their hobbies or games and stuff like that, which can serve as a very good platform for businesses to to advertise their products or services. And then the last one is use the data perfectly well so that you can provide better services or better experiences to your customers. With this, I will stop. Obviously, it's not a live session, so I cannot ask for any questions. But if you have any questions or if you want to talk about anything that I just said, feel free to send me an email on this email address and I'll be very happy to respond to your emails. Thank you very much and have a great conference.
Doktor Fayzan Ali'ye anlatımlarından dolayı teşekkür ederiz. Hocamıza iletmek üzere sorularınız varsa biz not edebiliriz dilerseniz. Herhalde yok. Evet, hocamızın yaz okuluna vermiş olduğu katkılardan dolayı plaketi tarafına gönderilecektir. Tekrar teşekkür ederiz. Değerli katılımcılar, 12-15-13-15 arası öğle yemeği aramız bulunmaktadır. 13-15'te Turizmde Oyunlaştırma Metaverse adlı sunumda görüşmek dileğiyle. Afiyet olsun.
1 milyon istihdam projesini Türkiye'nin ilk ve tek bilgi teknolojileri sektörüne özel eğitim ve istihdam platformu ediyoruz. Projemizde kendini geliştirerek istihdam edilmek isteyen adaylarla personel arayan, bilgi teknolojileri alanında personel arayan işveren şirketlerimizi